What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, welcome back to the vlog, and welcome back to another series in the perfection of the ZR2. Today we're gonna have some more off-road goodies, so something to help beef up the already pretty beefy ZR2 suspension and kind of protect everything. So let's jump into it. All right, guys, so like I said, we are perfecting the ZR2 today for some more off-roading goodness, and that comes in the form of two different packages. So number one, we have the 589 shock skids. So if you guys know, the ZR2 has kind of low-hanging rear shock mounts there, and those things can kind of get caught up on some stuff. These are going to help protect that point as well as assist in gliding rocks past rather than slamming right into the actual strut mount. And then in the other box here, we have the stuff from the guys over at Peak. Now this is actually a tie rod end sleeve that will help protect those tie rod ends from snapping while doing any kind of rock crawling or any kind of deep mud ruts and stuff like that. So these are all pretty easy to install, but with the Peak stuff, you may want to get an alignment afterwards. So I probably should have done this before I did my 1-inch level kit, but yeah, live and learn. So if you guys are watching this and you haven't done either one of these two things yet, do them both at the same time and then go get your alignment. So anyway, like I said, it's not super difficult stuff today, but it is very important when it comes to off-roading. This truck is going to definitely see some more off-roading in its future, and we're going to make sure that every time we go out off-roading, we can do a little bit more aggressive things and still bring the truck home in one piece. And we're going to start with the 589 rear shock skids, and as you guys can see, there's a little bit of mud here, and that's because when you go off-roading like I did in that previous video, mud freaking gets everywhere. So it was all splattered up behind my license plate. I took that off to clean it, and yeah, sure enough, there is a bunch of freaking mud. So we're probably gonna see a bunch more under there in a second, but the rear shock skids are first, then we're gonna move on to the front Peak tie rod end sleeves. So yeah, let's do this. So before we get started, guys, I'm gonna go over all the hardware you're gonna need to get this done and all the tools and everything. My friend with the other ZR2 that went off-roading with me the other day has already done these particular shock skids on his truck, so he has fully educated me on exactly what we need to do, and now we're going to document the process. So in this case, if you have an impact, this probably will be your best friend. If not, you can get away with just a normal ratchet. But what you're going to need on top of all that stuff is your typical sockets here. One of them is going to be a 21 millimeter. You're going to need that to get off the stock bolts. Another one is an 18 millimeter and a 13 millimeter. So that's all you're really going to need for the actual sockets. You are going to need a 21 millimeter wrench, or in my case, this is a 13/16 because that was the biggest I could find. Either one will work. And then obviously some sort of hammer. In this case, this is a dead blow to help move out the old bolts and all that good stuff. So that's pretty much it. For the rear shock skids, there's not a huge selection of tools necessary. So let's go ahead, get underneath the truck and get this process started. It's not horribly muddy. I mean, you can definitely tell it has seen some off-road, but there's the AEV differential cover we did in the previous video that you guys probably saw, but if not, check that out. That was a really, really awesome install, and it does actually provide some protection for off-roading as well. So yeah, check that out. Also that new differential breather tube, all good stuff. But anyway, we are going to start with the driver's side strut first, so let's jump into it. So the first step here is going to be to remove this stock 21 millimeter bolt right there. This is where you're going to need your 21, or in my case 3/16 wrench on the other side, because there is a nut over there as well. So that is pretty much it for the stock disassembly. That's just that one bolt. Now it's time to go ahead and start getting the 589 skids in place. As you can see, the strut is going to kind of come all the way down. It's going to show you it's full articulation here. In order to get this to work, we got to push this back up. So this is where a second pair of hands will come in handy, no pun intended, to kind of help you push these things up and get the skids back in place. So let's do it. Once it's in place like so, we're going to kind of just slide the new bolt through. Like that. This is looking fairly easy because there's two people involved. My friend has told me that by yourself, this is not quite as easy. If you have the option of having two people, definitely take that option. All right, so once we get the gold bolt in place, that is a replacement bolt for the stock one, which is 21 millimeter. The next step is to put the included bolt right up here to hold the bracket in place. Now that is this bolt here, and as you can see, it is self-tapping. So whenever we go to put this in up here, we're gonna just kind of start this into place, and then I'm gonna impact it down to thread it as the bolt goes in. And that is it. So other than that, we're gonna go ahead and put the stock nut back on the other side, and then the driver's side one is done. To finish this up, we are going to torque this bolt right here down to 118 foot-pounds. And that torque number is obviously the same for both sides. We're gonna go ahead and jump into the passenger side now, but you saw the process. It's really not very difficult. It's especially easy if you have two people. And the passenger side is basically more of the same, guys. The only difference is this bolt right here is already threaded, so you don't have to put a self-tapping bolt in through there. Other than that, it's basically the same, only backwards, because the strut is on the other side of the axle here. I'm not going to film it because it's basically more of the same, but only backwards, I guess. Lastly, like I said, guys, we are going to go ahead and torque these down. So it is 118 foot-pounds, just like that. The shock skids are all in place here, and yeah, the rear end here is looking pretty friggin' good. With that AEV differential cover, the shock skids, we are pretty much fully protected under here for off-roading. The only other option you could do would be, of course, the rear shock relocation, and I don't know if I want to go that far with it. I'm going to try it out with the skids first and see what happens, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, it is looking good. The next step is going to be to go ahead and put on the peak tie rod and sleeves. Now, these things you can't tell on video, but these things have some serious heft to them. They are carved out of, I'm assuming, solid aluminum. And of course they have the laser etched peak logo there. These will be pretty visible on the ZR2, so that's kind of cool, I guess, but these are really there for protection. And you can tell by the inside here, they are pretty beefy, so they're going to definitely offer some protection. They're pretty easy to install, but like I said, you're going to probably need an alignment afterwards, and if that's the case, you should do this alongside your level kit if you're going to follow the same kind of build that I'm doing here. Now we're up front, guys. We are going to go ahead and remove the wheel to gain access to the tie rod end that we're going to have to put that sleeve on. The easiest way to do it is remove the wheel so you have full access to everything. You could probably do this without removing the wheel, but for video's sake, we're going to remove the wheel. So here's where we're going to be working today, right here at the tie rod end. We're going to take this off with the 21mm socket. Right there, we'll take that out, punch out the bottom part of it, and then ultimately we got to unscrew the outer tie rod end right here to thread on the peak sleeves right in this area here. First step, loosening the jam nut right here, which is a 21mm nut. In this case, like I said, I have the 13/16. That's what we're going to use to go ahead and loosen up that nut. So with the jam nut loose, the next step is going to be to go ahead and take off the 21mm nut holding the tie rod on. This is the part where you're going to want to be cautious, because if you don't want to have to do an alignment, when this comes out, make sure you have a good idea of where this thing is placed, because when we take this off, it unscrews. We're going to count how many turns it takes to take it off. So when we put on the new sleeve, we can put this back on the same amount of turns, and then you're right around where you were. So now we can just go ahead and kind of pull this out. And like I said, we're not going to move this too much. We're going to count the turns to take this off. So every full turn we're going to count. So we got 1, 2, 3,
5 minutes later,
14, 15, basically 15 turns. Start it right there when we go to put it back on. After the tie rod end is off, we'll go ahead and take off the jam nut. For those of you who don't know, the peak sleeve is going to act as the new jam nut, so you won't need the old one anymore. Before putting the new peak sleeves on, it does actually come with some anti-seize, so we're going to kind of load up the threads here with anti-seize just to make sure this thing never gets stuck on here. So lastly, we're going to go ahead and just slide the cover on. It'll slide right over all that threading and then start threading on just like the jam nut did. You can see right off the bat that thing beefs up that tie rod end pretty nicely. Now with the peak sleeve in place, we're going to go ahead and start threading this on. So we have 15 turns. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Now after you get it to that point, you're going to then loosen up the peak sleeve to come down. And once that's butted up relatively tight, we'll go ahead and just slide the tie rod back up into the knuckle here and put the nut on and start tightening it up. And they are done. So I have the driver's side one done. I'm not going to show you the passenger side one because it's going to be the same procedure yet again. So this is what you're going to see here. I'll show you once I get the wheel on and how visible that is from the outside. This does offer a lot of protection, but at the end of the day, it also looks pretty cool. So you're going to be able to see it a little bit on the ZR2 because of these large cutaway front bumper areas. I like that. I really do like it, but I really like the idea of the added support and protection on off-roading stuff. So we're going to go ahead, throw the wheel on here, do the passenger side, and then I'm going to meet you back here to show you what all this stuff ends up looking like. All right, guys, so we have everything installed. As you can see underneath here, we have the 589 shock skids in place, all looking good, all protected. And around the front of the truck, we also have the Peak tie rod end sleeves. Now, this is what's going to really help take this truck to the next level when it comes to off-roading. And as you can see, they look really freaking cool in there too. But at the end of the day, they are there for protection. They do look really cool, but they are going to provide some serious off-road support alongside of all the other things that we are going to be doing with the ZR2. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it for today's video. So if you liked what you saw, please give me a big thumbs up. If you have any questions about the content, the 589 shock skids or the Peak tie rod sleeves, shoot them in the comment section down below and I will make sure you get an answer. If you guys haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'm going to have loads of ZR2 content coming that you are definitely not going to want to miss. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next upload.